This is a 2-year bill, and that's just basically a hope and a dream and a handshake that you're going to commit to those spending caps when you may not even be in the majority 2 years from now.
This is $2 trillion in savings over the next 10 years. This is the largest rescissions package in American history.
And there might have been an agreement, but the decision to pass President Biden's and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's debt ceiling bill was contentious.
Some unhappy hardline conservatives are even floating the idea of ousting McCarthy from his position. The Hill's Emily Brooks joins us live this morning. Emily, it is good to have you here on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I want to talk about the vote last night. How big of a win was this for Speaker McCarthy?
Well, going into last night, everybody was pretty much expecting the bill to pass with the help of Democrats. But the big question was how much Republican support would Speaker McCarthy get? Because he needed at least half of his conference to vote for it in order to be politically safe. That's basically political wisdom. But then Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who's leader of the Democrats, was saying, well, we're expecting at least 2/3 of the Republican conference to vote for this. And so last night we went in there and McCarthy did end up getting 2/3 of the conference to vote for it. But that, of course, was not without a lot of vocal opposition from those Republicans, like you mentioned, who were very upset that the bill did not include steeper spending cuts. They thought that Speaker McCarthy could have taken a tougher line to negotiate with the White House to get more of those cuts. But ultimately, Speaker McCarthy did keep the 2/3 of his conference together, and that will help him as he tries to repair some of those relationships going forward.
And Emily, and even though this did pass, as you mentioned, 71 Republicans, 46 Democrats voted no against this. Was this still a small victory for both sides? I mean, we're working with a divided government here.
I think it was a victory for both sides. And for Speaker McCarthy, this was really his first big way to prove that he can negotiate a bipartisan deal that both sides can support. This is his first time as Speaker doing something like that. And then this was definitely a win for Democrats and President Biden because the debt ceiling has been suspended past the next election into 2025. That means we're not going to have this kind of flashpoint that must pass legislation that needs to happen before the election that Republicans can use to try and pressure to get more concessions out of the White House. And so not having that on the table before the next election is something Democrats will definitely be very excited about. And it is also something that those Republicans who voted no were unhappy about because they want as many of those tools that they can use for leverage to get concessions as possible.
Well, and those hardline Republicans, the passage of that bill, did that strain GOP relations even more? And what's going to happen in the coming days and weeks behind the scenes to try to, put a Band-Aid on that?
It certainly did strain some relationships. And I'll tell you a little story about Representative Garrett Graves of Louisiana was one of the key Republican negotiators for this deal. And if you think back to the Speaker's election, that 15 ballot saga in January, he was instrumental in that too, negotiating with Republicans, hardline Freedom Caucus conservatives like Representative Chip Roy. He said that during that time, those two gentlemen learned to have like a better relationship, got to know each other better, learned to respect each other. And they did work very closely together and talked a lot in the months since until this debt ceiling saga where Chip Roy was very unhappy with the deal, very vocal against it. And Representative Garrett Graves said that there was definitely some trust lost there because of that vocal opposition from Chip Roy that will need to be repaired. And you do have, of course, at least one representative, North Carolina Representative Dan Bishop, saying that he thinks Speaker McCarthy there should be a vote whether to remove him from office. And so that is something that could possibly be on the table too. There's going to have to be a lot of discussions to figure out what is going to happen around there. And if there is enough outrage for Republicans who are upset with the deal to actually move forward with a vote to try and remove Speaker McCarthy from his position.
Emily, you mentioned Representative Graves out of Louisiana. The other lead negotiator who helped him kind of get this deal through with Speaker McCarthy is Representative Patrick McHenry, who's from North Carolina. He's been kind of quiet the last 10 or 20 years in being in office, and now we're seeing him for the first time, kind of spotlighted. Could this be a positive move for his positioning in the GOP over the months and maybe years to come?
Well, Patrick McHenry is chair of the Financial Services Committee, so he does have a pretty powerful position, but he has decided to not be out in front in leadership. He declined to run for House Majority Whip, which is the #3 position in the House Republican Conference, instead trying to go to that policy route that's a little bit more behind the scenes. And, he did have a funny quote when he was talking to reporters. He didn't really ask to be in this position. He said, "I'm just a little guy with a bow tie walking around doing my thing." And because he wears bow ties all the time. And then he went into Speaker McCarthy's office to see how he could help with these negotiations, and he ended up being one of the lead negotiators. And so he was kind of thrown into this position, but he was very instrumental and policy focused in getting this done. And I think from what he has told reporters, he is looking forward to going back and focusing more on those financial issues, the bank failures that have happened, more of those technical aspects now that this debt bill has been passed.
Emily, shifting to today, we know the bill headed to the Senate. How quickly are we expecting action to be taken there?
Well, the Senate must take action before Monday in order to avoid a default. And there were some threats from Senator Mike Lee of Utah of maybe dragging out floor proceedings because of being upset with the bill. But now Senator Lee is saying that he doesn't really see a point in delaying it further when everybody is expecting it to pass. And so there might be some kind of agreement on amendment votes, 1 or 2 amendment votes. We're expecting that bill to come out unchanged, and potentially senators could vote for it today or tomorrow and leave Washington by this weekend.
All right, Emily Brooks, so with The Hill, we appreciate your time bringing us up to speed on everything that's happened in D.C. and will happen. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.